we will start that now. There we go. Okay. So our agenda, so what we're going to be doing for the next hour is I'll start things off with about Muskoka Conservancy, a little bit of an update, if you haven't heard from us in a while. Then we'll talk about some background information about what owls are, what makes them unique, what characteristics they have. We'll get into how to identify the owls of Muskoka. Hopefully, I do have their calls in there as well, so hopefully the recordings will work. I know sometimes it's a bit tricky with Zoom for it to actually be picked up. I will talk very, very briefly about the other owls in Ontario that aren't found here in Muskoka. We'll talk about threats to owls and how to help, and then a little bit on how to find owls. I will have a couple questions for you guys in here as well, a little bit of a quiz. So feel free to just, guess the answers because they're not always easy to answer. And we'll have some quizzing on how to, on the owls themselves as well, and have you guys guess what the different species are. All right. So about Muskoka Conservancy, we are the Land Trust of Muskoka or Nature Conservancy of Muskoka, and we are a registered charity. We've been around since 1987, and our mission is to conserve and protect the nature of Muskoka. And we do this by physically acquiring land that, once protected by us, is protected in perpetuity forever for all future generations of humans and the public, as well as for our wildlife, species at risk, plants, and all of that amazing stuff on the land. And we do this by acquiring land that through generous donations from community members who are interested in seeing their land protected. And in more recent years, there's been more funding, more grants, family foundations that are interested in funding land protection as well. So we've been able to purchase lands in more recent years as well. So as of 2024, we're protecting 56 different areas across the region, and this adds up to about 4,600 acres of land, over 64,000 feet of sensitive shoreline on our big lakes like Lake Muskoka, Lake Joseph, Lake of Bays, as well as some of our smaller lakes as well, which of course are protecting really important resource water for us, as well as just over 800 acres of wetland, which are extremely amazing habitats for our species at risk. Do you have a question, Phyllis?
Yes, please. Just quickly, just the word protected to me, does that just mean nobody can go there and hunt? Is that what that means?
It means a bit more than that. So they are protected. Most of them are closed to the public and have no public access, which means
Okay.
no ATVs, no hunting, no camping, all of that. We do have a handful that are open to the public and do have trails on them that you can access. And we're hoping to open up a couple more for people to enjoy and for different nature programming within the next couple years. But of course, this all takes time, and we get some amazing help from our volunteers with programs like that that help with trail work. And you can see if you go to our website, which is muskokaconservancy.org. We do have a map on there that shows which ones are closed to the public and which ones are open to the public. Some that are on lakes, you can also paddle around and explore the wetlands and things like that. But yeah, most of them are protected strictly for nature conservation.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Thank you.
No problem. Before we get into our owls, I just want to touch on Giving Tuesday, which some of you may have heard about or might recall from last year in November. So Giving Tuesday is next Tuesday, December 3rd. And it's celebrated annually on the Tuesday following American Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, that big weekend. It's a global movement of generosity and giving, which encourages people to give back to their communities and make a difference. And we're excited to announce or say that so far we have $16,000 of matching funds that we've been given or have been pledged, I guess is the better phrasing for it. Meaning that when you make a donation next Tuesday, your donations will be matched up to $16,000. So this is pretty amazing, really great potential to raise a lot of money on Giving Tuesday. And you can donate through our website. Um, there should be like a big button in the top right corner, I believe. Or you can call Francesca, who's our office manager. I've got the phone number down here, which you can also find on the website. Um, with a donation of $95, you can become a member. And you can also sign up for monthly donations or anything like that. We do understand that not everyone can give a monetary donation as well, and that's no problem. There's other ways you can give back, such as becoming a volunteer, participating in webinars and Nature Quest to learn more, and just sharing your love and knowledge of nature to support that we're doing at the Conservancy. So I just wanted to touch on that to save the date for next Tuesday. And yeah, we can get some funding matched, which is very exciting. All right. So now that I've covered all of that fun background information, we'll start talking about owls. Um, so the first question is, what is an owl? You know, we've all probably seen an owl and or at least seen a photo of one and have an idea, but to define them in a couple words, they are considered a bird of prey, also known as a raptor. Um, and that means they're kind of defined by having a really sharp beak for tearing into prey, as well as really sharp talons and big feet for catching different prey as well. So they're a predator that will feed on basically anything that's smaller than them, whether it's a bird, mammal, reptile, amphibians like frogs. I've seen barred owls hunting in ponds and catching frogs, and even insects as well, like dragonflies, moths, and things like that. They're usually nocturnal or crepuscular, and they're occasionally diurnal. Most of us probably know what nocturnal means. The other two are a little less commonly heard, but crepuscular means that they are also very often active during those in-between periods of dusk and dawn. And that's when they're out hunting. We do have a couple species that are diurnal as well, which means they're active during the daytime, but most are nocturnal or crepuscular. And over the next few slides, we'll talk about what features they have and what characteristics they have that allow them to be so great at being active at night and hunting at nighttime. So the first thing we'll talk about is that they have silent flight. So how does this happen? You might recall walking in a forest and hearing a raven or crow fly overhead, and you can hear the beating of their wings as they fly over. But if you were to hear, or sorry, if an owl were to fly by, you wouldn't actually be able to pick up any sound as they flap overhead. Um, and there's a couple things that help them with this. The first thing is that they have very large wings in proportion to the size of their body. For example, if you look at this owl here, you'll see that their wings are very, very wide, almost about half the length of their body, I would say. And this allows them to use less energy. They are able to flap their wings slower and less often, and they can still get to the location that they're headed in a quick enough time because they have a lot of power in these large wings compared to if you think of a crow or a raven, which have more narrow and smaller wings. So they need to flap a lot more often, making more noise. If you were to look at their feathers up close, which we've got some great photos of here, um, the top edge of their feather, which is called the leading edge, has these fine comb-like serrations, and the bottom of their feather is sort of fringed, also called the trailing edge. And by being broken up on the edges of their feather, their feathers are actually able to break up the turbulent air that's caused when they're flying, and that helps to absorb the sound that's caused by flapping their wings. Whereas if you were to look at, again, a crow or a raven wing, it would sort of be like very smooth or a hard edge, if you will, whereas this is very broken up and fringed. So these are the features that they have that help them with silent flight. The other question is, why do they have silent flight? And in my research for this presentation, there was no definite answer, but the two main ideas is so their prey cannot hear them coming, or so they can hear better as well. No matter what, it helps them with being good hunters during the nighttime for sure. Their next interesting feature is that they have excellent vision. So they don't actually have a characteristic eyeball, if you think about, our human eyes and our skulls. Um, but their eyes are actually more tubular shaped. They're forward facing as well, and they take up most of the space in their skull. They have binocular vision, which you can see in this diagram down here, which gives them really great depth perception for locating their prey. They also can't actually move their eyes like we can if we want to look in different directions, but they're actually held in place with bony structures called sclerotic rings. So this is why you have probably seen an owl turning their head at very wide angles because they can't move their eyes individually and they need to turn their head to be able to see things all around them. But contrary to popular belief, they can't turn their head all the way around, only 270 degrees. They have actually twice as many vertebrae in their neck than humans do. So they have 14 vertebrae in their neck, which really helps them to be able to twist their heads all the way around. Um, the other thing is that all aspects of an owl's eye is enlarged. So they have very large eyes, which allow them to take in enough light to see really well in the dark. They have abundant rod cells. So if you know a lot about eye biology, which I don't know a ton, but I found some great information in my research. But the rod cells are used for detecting light and movement. And they also have a reflective layer behind their retina, which is called the tapetum lucidum, which amplifies images for them in low light. So that's the feature that you see in many animals that reflects light back. So if you think about a deer in the headlights and you see that eye reflecting back. The last characteristic, they've got lots that help them with having great vision, is that they have a nictitating membrane, more commonly known as a second eyelid, which protects their eyes when they're flying. And you can actually see it in this young owlet here. So you can see this sort of dark band that goes across both of their eyes, which is their clear second eyelid, which sort of acts as a windshield wiper for them. One moment. Okay. So although they have excellent vision, they have even better hearing, which is extremely helpful for hunting at nighttime. So most owls, not all owls actually have this, but most of them have asymmetrically positioned ears. So this is one ear here on this side of the skull, and the other, which you can see, is set lower on the other side. So this allows sounds to reach each ear at different times. So birds are able to triangulate where exactly sounds are coming from and know where the prey is that they're hearing and know exactly where to, dive down and catch the mouse or whatever the prey item is. They also have a facial disc, which you can see on this owl here, which helps to funnel sound down into their ear openings. So those are the two main things that assist their hearing, but overall they just have really excellent ears. So those are a few specific characteristics of our owls. And I've got another slide here about some interesting facts about owls before we get into our specific species ID. So unlike most other birds, most owl species have feathers both on their legs and their feet. So if you think of a robin and they've got all scales on their feet, most owls and quite a few different species of hawk as well will have feathers to help them keep warm on their legs as well. The average lifespan of owls is 5 to 12 years, and of course depends on species as well as, different outside characteristics as well, or environmental characteristics. Breeding generally begins in the first half of the year. And that's when you'll generally start hearing owls calling as they're starting breeding season and trying to attract a mate or marking their territory. Most will only call during this period, but there are some species that will call year-round as well. Owls are generally considered to be monogamous, so mating with one other partner. But in years with abundant prey, where they have lots of energy to help them, they may actually breed with multiple partners. So sometimes there's exceptions. Um, and then my last interesting fact is that some owls will actually prey on other smaller owls as well. So the barred owl doesn't have many predators, but one of their main predators is actually the great horned owl that will go after them. So not owls are not always safe, even though they're big predators in the food chain. Okay. So my first question for you guys before we get into our specific owl identification is how many owls do you think live in Muskoka? And I'll explain that a bit more because I'm also including owls that might fly down and just live in Muskoka in the wintertime as well. Um, so feel free to unmute yourselves and guess. Don't worry about being wrong. It is sort of just a random guess, or you can put it in the chat as well. Oh, I see a couple. Let me open that up. 6. Someone guessed 200. There's not that many species. I definitely couldn't cover all of those in a presentation of this length. 6 is a good guess, but there are a few more. Anyone else have a guess? The answer is, 9. So there's 9 different species that we'll cover today. And like I said, some of them are here year round and some only pass by during, come down when they're migrating in the winter time. Okay. Our first owl is the most common owl that you'll see in Muskoka. And I'll go through all of the different identification and their habitat before I get you guys to guess what species you think this is. So this species is, considered to be a large owl. They have a round head with no ear tufts or horns present. They're brown and white all over with brown barring on their chest and stomach. So these vertical barring stripes. And they have dark, almost black eyes. I'll play their call, which sounds like "Who cooks for you?" Some of you have probably heard it before. And I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that you guys can hear it. There is a chance that the audio won't get picked up, but I can share links to audio and where you can find their calls in my follow-up email later today as well if it doesn't work, but fingers crossed. Does anyone hear it? Darn. Let me try unplugging my headphones for a moment, and then it might pick up the audio. Let me know. How do I play it again? Okay. Still nothing? We're not good. Okay. I'll send you guys the calls then. Sorry about that. Uh-oh. Now my computer's freaking out a bit. Can you guys hear me still? Okay. One moment, something popped up. Okay, there we go. All right, so it sounds like "Who cooks for you?" And like I said, I'll send out the audio to you guys. In terms of their habitat, the habitat is kind of similar for most of our different species. This species prefers mature forests, swamps, areas located by streams, upland areas. So really, it covers all of the different habitats for the most part. And generally, these different species of trees are found in the forest that they like. In terms of their distribution, you'll see they're pretty widespread across North America. So now I'll ask you guys to guess what species you think this is. Oh, I see one in here. Barred owl. You're right. Oh no. Let me get my slides to work. There we go. Okay. Yes, this is our barred owl, lovely owl that we get to see pretty often in Muskoka, which is amazing. One fun fact about our barred owls, I don't have it on the screen, but I have it in my notes, is that barred owls can actually, or sorry, young barred owls can actually climb trees. So they'll grasp the bark with their bill and talons, and they can flap their wings and walk their way up the trunk. So if they fall out of a tree or, jump down, they're able to get back up. So I've included a little fun fact just to spice up the presentation a little bit for each of our species as well. Good job on your guesses, everyone. Okay, our next owl is another large owl. They also have a rounded head, but they've got these very prominent ear tufts or horns, gray and brown mottling all over the body, with a reddish brown, sort of cinnamon colored face, and a patch of white on their throat, which is kind of hard to see in this photo, and bright yellow eyes. They sort of have that characteristic call and who that you think of when you think of an owl's call. I'll try and play it, but you guys probably won't hear it, and I'll send it after. In terms of their habitat and distribution, again, pretty wide variety of coniferous, deciduous, or mixed forests, but they do prefer secondary growth forests. You'll also find them in swamps, orchards, fields, and areas with open areas and wetlands and fields. And they're pretty widespread in their distribution as well. Any guesses for this species? The great horned owl, says Wendy. Yes, that's right. So identified mainly for those nice horns that they have on their head. And my fun fact for them is that even though the female great horned owl is larger than her mate, the male has a larger voice box and a deeper voice. So often you'll hear pairs calling back to each other or having a little duet, and you can actually hear the differences in pitch. So you can find out or sort of think about, which one's the male calling and which one's the female calling. Okay. Yeah, great. Well, oh, it's playing the call again, which probably only I can hear. For great horned owl. Okay. Next one. We're moving over to our small owls for a little bit. So very small owl, only 16 to 25 centimeters tall. They have a rounded head with these pointed little ear tufts. They can be quite variable in color, actually. So they can be gray, brown, red, with all sorts of different mottling, banding, and spotting on the body. And they do have yellow eyes as well. Their call is an even-pitched trill, so very high-pitched trill that descends down into a whinny that sounds almost like a horse. Probably can't hear it. In terms of their habitat and distribution, this species is generally more associated with urban areas, and they're not too afraid to be close to urban settlements. And they're found in various habitats. They do nest in cavities, so they prefer forests with trees that have nice cavities for them to nest in. And they're found sort of all over eastern North America. Any guesses for this one? Let me get the chat open. Any guesses? Carol says screech owl. That's right. This is our eastern screech owl. There is a western species, which basically covers that missing half of North America. The oldest recorded eastern screech owl in the wild was at least 14 years old. It was 6 months old when it was found in Ontario. And sorry, it was 6 months old when it was found in Ontario in 1968. And in the same province where it had been banded, oh, in 1955. There we go. Just need to read my notes correctly. Um, great. Okay. Our next owl is another small owl, 18 to 21 centimeters in height, large round head, no ear tufts or horns present, mottled brown and white back and head with these little white eyebrows that you can see. Their belly or breast is white with these really nice cinnamon streaks, and they've got yellow eyes. Their call is a high-pitched toot, 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 toot whistle, um, which probably won't play. So I'll just, I can't skip it. So I get to listen to it. Sorry, guys. In terms of their habitat and distribution, they prefer mature forests with an open understory, deciduous trees for nesting in, and coniferous trees for roosting in and sleeping in during the day, with river habitat nearby. Pretty widespread across North America again. Um, oh, I guess, I think I need, okay, yeah. Does anyone know what this one is? Oh, it's on the slide. Oops. Haha, my bad. I gave this one away to you guys, our northern sockeye owl. Thanks for letting me know. I must have pressed the button by accident. My fun fact for them, hopefully, oh dear, what have I done? Okay, there we go. Sorry, I'm having a bit of technical difficulties with the slides, so bear with me with that. But my fun fact for them is that juvenile saw-whet owls have a completely different appearance than their parents. So they have a dark brown face. This is, some triplets here, and their belly is completely cinnamon color. And as they mature, they will get the adult plumage, but they're very, very cute when they're young. And they do still have those very distinct white eyebrows. Okay. Sorry for all the technical difficulties. Our next owl here is considered a medium-sized owl. Again, rounded head, no ear tufts for this guy. A nice whitish gray face with this distinct black border on either side. Their back is brown with these nice little white spots, and their belly is white with these horizontal barring across the belly, which is pretty fine, and yellow eyes, as you can see. Their call is a slow rolling whistling trill. Unfortunately, I'm not going to verbally do the calls for you guys today. But like I said, I'll send them around. It's a very long recording. Okay. Their habitat and distribution is open, coniferous or mixed forests bordered by open areas like fields or marshes. As you can see, they're a more northern species. This blue dotted line marks their southern wintering range limits. So they're sort of, their habitat, their year-round habitat is right on the edge of Muskoka, but we don't really see them breeding here in Muskoka at all. But we will spot them every couple of years in the winter time. So that's why I included them in our presentation to share some information. And any guesses on what this species is? Not seeing any guesses yet. Just a wild guess from someone, anyone. Too tricky? Okay, I'll give it to you. Oh, someone guessed great gray. Not quite. The great gray is another one that is more northern and found only in the winter times in Muskoka. But this is a different species. They get their name because their silhouette, this is probably going to give it away, but their silhouette with their long tail kind of gives them a hawk-like appearance. Does that hint help anyone? Maybe not. Okay. I won't torture you guys then. Oh, darn. It's the northern hawk owl. So hopefully that will help you remember it next time. So my fun fact for them is that northern hawk owls don't actually have asymmetrical ear openings like most other owls, which I mentioned earlier. So they are thought to detect prey primarily by sight, and that is the reason why they don't need to have the asymmetrical hearing to help them. Along with their tendency to hunt in the daytime, their symmetrical ear openings are cited as evidence for daytime hunting. Their ears presumably have less acute hearing than the asymmetrical ear openings of species such as the boreal and great gray owls. Even so, hawk owls can still find prey by sound, even when it's under a foot of snow. But that's my fun fact for the hawk owl. Okay, next is one of our very large owls. Um, they have a big rounded head, no ear tufts present, silver, grayish brown body all over with different markings and streaking of the same colors. Um, they have two pale arcs between the eyes, which form an X. They're sort of a lighter gray that you can see here. Hopefully you guys can see my mouse. And a little white bow tie as well with a black marking in the center and nice yellow eyes. Their call is a low-pitched woo call that they'll make. Um, their habitat is dense, wet, coniferous forests far north, as you can see in their range here. They'll hunt in meadows, bogs, and other open areas. And they're relatively rare in Muskoka, but they may winter here if rodent populations are high and in good condition. Any guesses for this big guy or girl? Great gray. Yes, good job. This is our great gray owl. There we go. What is my fun fact for them? Um, so I actually have two fun facts. So the great gray owls aren't just a North American species. It's actually the same with some of our other species as well. But they're also found in Scandinavia, Russia, Siberia, and Mongolia in boreal forest habitat. And although they are one of the tallest owls in North America, so depending on what parameter or measurement you're looking at, there's different debate as to what the largest owl um, in North America is, whether it's the great horned owl or the great gray owl. This one is one of the tallest, but they actually weigh less and are not as strong as the great horned owl. So those are my fun facts. Next is another one of our medium-sized owls, round head with very long tri-colored ear tufts. They've got this beautiful cinnamon orange face, similar to the great horned owl, um, with these sort of whitish gray lines between the eyes. And all over the rest of their body is black, brown, and buff colored patterning, and they've got yellow eyes as well. They will make a series of 10 to 200 who notes that are spaced out by 2 to 4 seconds. And that's what their call sounds like. Their habitat and distribution, they roost in dense vegetation and they'll forage in open grasslands, shrublands, and open forest habitats. And again, pretty widespread across North America. Any guesses for what this species is? Long-eared owl. Yes, good job. Our long-eared owl, very fittedly named for having those big long ear tufts. My fun fact for them is that in addition to the North American and Eurasian populations, isolated groups of long-eared owls occur in North and East Africa, the Azores, and the Canary Islands. So while this owl's biology has been extensively studied in the US and Europe, little is actually known in other parts of its range. Um, so I found it pretty interesting. I'm thinking about, this owl being found in Ontario, but it's actually found in parts of Africa, Canary Islands, which is pretty interesting about how widespread their range actually is. Okay, our next owl is another medium owl. Round head with very short ear tufts that are actually rarely ever seen, but it's important that I mention that they have short ear tufts. You can't see them in this photo at all. Their back is brown with these nice sort of buffish beige and white spots. Their breast and belly are pale buff colored with brown streaks. And they've got these bright yellow eyes that are bordered in black. So it looks like, they put a lot of mascara on, put a lot of effort into their makeup. Um, their call, they actually are one of our owls that doesn't make a lot of calls, and they're not known for calling to each other. But they will sometimes make a series of hoots, and they'll also bark, whine, and make screaming noises. So they're not one that's easy to identify just by their call. Um, in terms of their habitat, they're quite specialized in hunting open areas, so large fields, meadows, prairies, up in the tundra, savanna habitat, things like that. So any guesses for what this species is? Short-eared owl. Yes, good job. So again, they're named for having short ears, but you hardly ever see them. So you'll have to rely on other characteristics to help you identify them. Okay, now I believe we're on to our last owl that is found in Muskoka in the wintertime. Also considered a large owl, round head. These ones also have very short ear tufts, which you can sort of see like little protrusions here and down here and here a little bit, but quite hard to actually see with the naked eye. Um, Adult males are completely white, like the individual here, whereas females are white with blackish brown markings all over. So they're one of the only owls that has what's called sexual dimorphism, which means you can tell the difference visually between the male and female. And they have yellow eyes as well. They will make low, raspy hoots, usually two at a time. They prefer treeless areas with wide open spaces and rolling terrain. So if you think about the tundra and the Arctic, that sort of habitat, um, when they come down to Muskoka area and further south in the wintertime, you'll see them hunting open fields and meadows and things like that. Um, they are one of our species that's known for being diurnal as well, so you can see them hunting during the daytime, which is very cool as well. This is a pretty easy one to identify, I think. We got a few people coming in. Yes, this is our snowy owl. Um, Great job, everyone. Okay, so that's all of the owls that you can sort of reliably see in Muskoka. But I'll touch on two other species that are found in the province now that you won't see in Muskoka. So first one is our barn owl, which is widespread in other parts of the world, but unfortunately in Ontario, they are considered endangered and listed as endangered. And there's very, very small populations found in southern Ontario. The other is our boreal owl, which is found in the boreal forests of North America and Europe. So they aren't considered migratory, but they can be nomadic. So they might fly through Muskoka, but not reliably. they're generally just found in the boreal forest. So those are our two little bonus owls that I wanted to include today. And oh, I've got a question from Phyllis. Go ahead.
Yes, Amanda, do we have those small little burrowing owls that live in the ground that you can find in Florida? Are they anywhere in Canada? Do you know?
Yes, we don't have them in Ontario, but they can be found out west in the prairies. Um, yeah, you can find them there. Yeah,
Very cool. Thank you. Yeah,
yeah.
I love those ones. I volunteered in Florida
Oh,
with a group
cool.
and saving, yeah, it was
Yeah,
wonderful.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. I've never
Yeah.
seen one before, just in like
Oh,
museums and stuff, and I hope to see one day for
yeah,
sure.
they're adorable. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no
Okay.
problem. Okay, so now we'll talk about our threats to owls and things that you can do to help. So threats to owls include habitat loss, unfortunately, due to destruction of their habitat for urbanization, and development, things like that. This also causes fragmentation, when they're losing their habitat. So, habitats get cut up and, it's hard for them to move to different locations and travel. Pesticides, um, as you guys, have learned today, um, one of the main sources of food for owls is mice and rats, which are considered pests, unfortunately. So when folks put out pesticides um, or poison to kill mice and rats, which are considered to be a nuisance species, um, the pesticide can actually live in the rodent system for a couple days, which allows animals to still hunt them and eat them, and therein get affected by the poisons. And this can even happen to outdoor cats as well. So um, be very mindful if you are using rodent poison or anything like that. Road mortality is another thing that affects our owls. So some of you may have seen owls perched on a hydro pole or a wire before while you're driving along the road. Um, so one of the things that draws them to the road is that that's a place that rodents really like as well. So one thing which I'll touch on for how you can help is to make sure you're not throwing food waste outside of your car window, even if it's something that's biodegradable, like a banana peel or an apple core, because that does draw more rodents to the side of the road, and therefore predators like hawks and owls, which will swoop down and occasionally get hit by cars as well. And then the last thing is light pollution, which, of course, leaving lights on all the time can disrupt owls and other nocturnal species when they're active at nighttime and when species are migrating as well. So, things that you can do to help. You can leave standing dead trees on your properties if you're able to, and it's safe to, as these can provide really good nesting habitat and perching hunting habitat for owls. You can put up appropriate sized nest boxes. So I do have a link in here, which I can send around with the recording of this session as well. So I guess it's all about birds, which is through the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. Um, they have um, they have plans for different species and what bird boxes they need. So yes, I'll circulate that around to you guys as well if you're interested in putting up a nest box. Um, Keep your cats inside, as they can injure lots of different species, prey items for our raptors and owls, and to keep your dogs on leash as well when you're walking in the woods to make sure they're not running off and interfering with wildlife. I already talked about this one, and keeping your lights off when possible, which is good for saving energy as well. Okay, so the last thing I'll talk about is some tips and tricks for how to find owls. So if you'd like to conduct an owl prowl of your own, here's some things to remember. So think about where you want to look. So what habitat you learned about today that owls like, as well as you should consider when to look, and tie that into, what habitats you're visiting as well. So during the day, most owls aren't very active and they'll be roosting. So usually they're found in coniferous trees, sort of huddled up next to the trunk of trees while they're resting and roosting. So that's where you can look during the day, unless you're looking for something like a hawk owl or a snowy owl, which is hunting during the daytime. If you're looking at night or during dusk and dawn, you can look for hunting owls near open areas because that's really great spots for them to find prey, so fields, marshes, things like that. And if you want to try to call owls in to see them and see if they'll respond, remember to stay quiet, keep lights off so it's nice and dark. Make sure you start with the smallest owl's call first, because if you play, let's say, the great horned owl's call first, they're a big predator and they will prey on other smaller owls. So that might scare off, saw-whet owls or eastern screech owls that are nearby. And then you can sort of increase to the bigger owls as you go. But the other most important thing is to make sure you're being respectful. Don't go out every night and try and call owls, but maybe once a year when you're, interested in seeing that you can, whether you can call an owl in or hear them respond, just do it a couple times to try it out. Make sure you're not doing it during breeding season when, they're trying to find a mate and you don't want to disrupt the natural processes. But yeah, those are the tips I have for how to find owls and call to them. And now we have time for some questions. We've got about 8 minutes left until it's 11, so feel free to unmute and ask a question or put it in the chat. I've also included my contact information, so if you want to write that down or take a photo of it and have a question at a later date, you can feel free to give me a shout. So someone has asked, isn't the barred owl the only dark-eyed owl here? Yes, that is correct. So they're the only species that has near black eyes. The rest are all yellow-eyed owls. Good question. Any other questions about owls or the Conservancy or anything? Let me know. No problem. Wendy recommends hawkeye.ca for an
Yeah,
intimate experience. Yeah, go ahead.
they're in Acton, Ontario, and not only do they have owls in captivity, but I believe falcons and eagles.
Mhm.
The owner provides animals for pest control in urban areas, for theatrical and movie
Wow.
performances. But you can go to the farm, if you will, have a wonderful educational experience with live owls or eagles or whatever, depending on the time of day. And then you get to actually fly
Wow.
animals. So, yeah, highly recommend it.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing experience. So that's hawkeye.ca.
Hawkeye, yeah.
Yeah,
If you just go to that website, you'll see all kinds of information.
cool. Thank you for sharing. We have another question here about if there's significance to the yellow eye color. My understanding there is. I can't remember exactly what the significance is at this point. Um, but you could probably search it up and find some information about it. And I'll try to look into it before I do another owl prowl presentation. I did think that the darker eyes helped with nocturnal species. Um, so it might be something like that, but as you can see, most of our nocturnal species actually have yellow eyes. Um, so I'll have to look into that a bit more. And then Ken asked to chat about the Merlin app a little bit. So many of you have probably heard of the Merlin Bird app. If you haven't, search it up in your app store. But it's a great feature for learning more about all sorts of different bird species that are found in your area. They've got a lot of the information similar to what I included today. So information about their habitat, distribution maps, different call recordings. And they also have an amazing feature where you can actually record the sounds that you're hearing as birds are calling around you, and it'll give you suggestions as to what is there. So it's an amazing tool for learning different bird calls and getting to learn more while you're out in nature. So definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't yet. And then I do see that Phyllis has her hand raised, so go ahead, Phyllis.
Thank you, Amanda. Muskoka is like at least 8 to 10 hour drive from where I am, so it's
Okay.
unlikely I'll ever get there.
Yeah.
Can you recommend any conservatories or anything along the lines of this in the Cornwall, Ontario area?
Um,
Like, do you know offhand any agencies or anywhere I can, like even just 1 hour radius? I'm kind of
yeah.
in between Ottawa and Montreal.
Okay, between Ottawa and Montreal. There should be a land trust in your area. So like I said, Muskoka Conservancy is a land trust, nature conservancy.
Okay, so
And
look
there,
under Google some land trust and just
yeah,
kind of search. Okay,
yeah.
land trust.
Yeah, you
Sure.
can look at if you Google the Ontario Land Trust Alliance, they're
Okay.
sort of a governing body which supports all of the different land trusts and conservancies in Ontario. And they do have a map and directory where you can find land trusts in your area. So definitely check that out. Thank you, Carol.
Area. Thank you very much. Thank
No
you.
problem. Well, if you have any other questions, let me know, or feel free to send me an email. But just want to thank everyone for participating in the webinar today, guessing answers to all of my different questions and asking questions at the end. I always appreciate talking to all of you and sharing some knowledge and some cool information about nature. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you at the next one, hopefully. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.